Good morning and welcome to the USA Cares podcast. I'm your host, Matt Castor. I am joined with my friend, Stefanie Jones. How are you, Stefanie?
I'm your friend today?
Well, today you are.
I'm doing good then.
Yeah, you're my friend today.
The day started good.
My regular co-host is under the weather.
That's your coworker. I'm your friend, though.
I need your help today, so all of a sudden you're my friend.
Well, I'll take it. I'll run with it.
That's a good start for me.
I know.
You know, and then you start out walking in the room with your big UK cup.
Absolutely,
so
I do.
That's strike one.
I got two more to play with.
You got
like
two
Nick
more to
said.
play with.
Two more.
I'm just saying you're off to a little bit of a rough start, but you know, I appreciate you coming along today.
Wow,
and
thank
helping
you.
out.
Of course, I'm always happy to be here.
A lot of stuff going on around the USA Cares world, isn't there?
I'd say so.
You know, yesterday we had a pretty cool time meeting with a bunch of people who are interested in getting chapters started across the country. So couldn't be more excited about the spread of USA Cares and the support that we're going to be able to offer to veterans around the country. It's pretty amazing. If you are new to the USA Cares podcast and have no idea what I'm talking about, this podcast is all about supporting veterans. So we are creating a community around the country where we can help those veterans who have served our country, the ones who are going through transition into more of a civilian career and need a little help, maybe need a little support. We're here to do that. I just want to be a source of encouragement and help out where we can. So I hope you'll hit the subscribe button and make this podcast part of your weekly routine. And we look forward to bringing some interesting guests to you every single week, sharing some stories and hopefully sharing some hope. So thank you for being part of this, and hit that subscribe button and join us. Want to give a quick shout out to a couple people. We always have a lot of wonderful supporters that come alongside of us. And Stefanie, one of those groups that's come alongside of us time and time again is Hardee's and Carl's Jr.
Absolutely.
They have done some amazing work. They just keep rising up. Right now, they are actually doing a roundup campaign, which, if you don't know what that is, when you go through the drive-through right now, I believe it's Carl's Jr. on the West Coast. Yeah. But if you go through the drive-through and you order your food, they'll ask you if you want to round up to the nearest dollar, and that amount you round up goes to USA Cares. So they are really going out of their way to help veterans through USA Cares, and we're honored to partner with them. Another group is Renewal by Anderson, who's continuously coming to us and wanting to help in any way they can. Just a fantastic company who's done a lot of good work to help veterans, and we're just very appreciative of them. So if you are looking to get some work done, maybe windows, or you're going to buy food, or any of those things, think about the company that you're spending your money with. Think about those companies and the ones that are supporting veterans, and try to give back to them if you can. So, Steph?
Matt?
So what else is happening in the USA Cares world?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked. Next week, we've got the USA Cares Groundhog Day Breakfast.
Woo!
You want to tell us why it's the Groundhog Day Breakfast?
Well, because my memory isn't so good, and I needed to give it a title when I could remember when the date is.
Well, I meant just mainly because it's on Groundhog Day.
Oh, right.
I have been asked a couple times about the date of that, and it is on Groundhog Day. But we are having a breakfast here locally at the Seal Box, so that'll be a really good time next morning.
It'll be a good kickstart, right?
Yeah,
the first quarter is always a slow one for nonprofits, so we're hoping to get a little boost. And I think in our conversation we said, if we call it the Groundhog Day Breakfast, how many people will come to us and say, when is that?
And more than you would like to know. I've realized that. Yeah, with events, that's definitely something I've noticed. But we're super excited for that, being able to pair with a new hotel as well.
Yeah.
And try this out. So
it's going to be
really a blast, I'd say.
Yeah. It's going to be really good. So we've got a lot of events coming up this year. Of course, we've got our annual gala coming up on July 23rd. And that'll be at the Galt House in downtown Louisville. We're excited to bring everybody back together. It's just nice to get people together again.
Yeah. And, hey, Matt, what if you're not in Louisville and you want to do an event with us?
Well, are you talking about chapters?
Yeah, I am.
Are you talking about?
Yeah, I am.
That was a nice lead-in, but a lot of times you should give me a little heads up of what you're talking about.
We could never be on the news together.
No,
we're fumbling. You're fumbling so hard.
I'm not fumbling. No. You're kind of dropping the ball.
I'm not fumbling.
But why don't you go ahead and talk about what you're going to talk about?
Oh, perfect. I'm glad that you asked. So we're talking about Louisville, Kentucky a lot. That's great if you're in Louisville, Kentucky. But if you're not, guess what? You're in luck. You can also do an event anywhere around the United States. We are growing, as Matt has spoken about a couple times. So feel free to reach out.
Yeah, I'm excited. The growth is exciting. We're in 12 cities right now. You know, the idea is to be in more than 30 by the end of this year. And I can tease that we've got a big announcement coming up.
We do.
Next week, we've got a big announcement. I'm not going to say what it is yet, but we got a big announcement coming up about maybe some new cities that are going to be coming on.
Yeah. So maybe follow, turn notifications
We'll
on,
see.
so on and so forth.
I'm just saying, pay attention to social media because there'll be a lot of stuff coming up. So, well, as I talked about earlier, we always try to bring on some special guests, and we try to share some stories. We try to give some different perspectives of the world that we're talking about. So today, I'm really excited. This is a gentleman that I've had the chance to speak to a number of times. I've gotten to get to know him a little bit, and has kind of had an interesting career path and can offer some really good perspectives. So I'm really excited to welcome to the podcast Mr. Nic Bush.
Thank you,
Good morning, Nic.
Welcome.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Glad you're willing to
for
put up
having me.
with us this morning.
Absolutely. It's a good way to start the day.
Right. He's had to listen to us blabber for the past 20 minutes this
Well,
morning.
some of us blabber, some of us don't.
Well,
but
I wasn't going to say you're blabbering, but
Oh, my
okay.
gosh.
It is you. You're right.
So, Nic, you and I have had a chance to speak a couple times, and I always enjoy talking to you. I always learn something a little bit more every time. You know, coming from the perspective of a non-veteran, I think there's always an element of surprise about all the career paths there are in the military. And yours is not one that I'd heard before, and I thought it was really interesting. If you would talk about it, I know you've been in the military for coming up on 17 years,
It'll be
right?
17 years in May.
That's a long time, Nic.
I'm not really sure how that happened.
Does it feel like you just joined?
Some days it does.
Yeah.
Some days.
That's good. Well, talk about your path. Talk about what kind of led you to joining the military and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So actually, out of high school, went to college with the intent of playing soccer.
Really?
Yeah, I was really looking to get onto any team that would allow me to play. But,
Right.
Ultimately, decided to go to WKU.
Okay.
And
It's a good school.
Was
Go
going to try to
Tops.
do a walk-on
Yeah.
situation there. They no longer even have a men's soccer team.
They
Oh,
don't?
wow.
No.
Wow,
I didn't
I
even
did
know
not.
that.
They do not. But so this was 2004. And one thing led to another. I didn't even make it to the tryouts.
Yeah.
So instead, I had just a really awesome year of college. Not from a GPA standpoint.
No.
From
You
the-
just spent all your
just
time
from
studying
an
and
experience
reading
standpoint.
books.
Right.
And,
The
yeah.
general definition of awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Gained a lot of experience there. And so after that first year, I knew that college wasn't the place for me to be.
Right.
At that particular point in my life.
Yeah.
I was going for exercise science.
Okay.
So I wanted to kind of think about, hey, how can I change this trajectory that I'm on
Yeah.
in a positive way?
Mhm.
And there was the military.
Yeah.
You know, and, a friend of mine from high school had already been in the Army for probably about a year,
Mhm.
I guess. And I talked to him a little bit, and the more we talked, the more like a good idea it sounded like in my head.
Yeah.
And just with the Army alone, kind of going back on you saying there's so many opportunities, just in the Army, there's, I think, over 200 job specialty
Wow.
Oh, wow.
opportunities, and that's just one branch.
Yeah.
So, you know, that whatever you want to do,
Yeah.
there is
Truly.
an opportunity. So just to try to set myself up for a post-military career,
Mm-hmm.
my decision was to try to maintain the exercise science medical realm.
Right.
And lo and behold, the Army had a combat medic specialty job.
Fit well with what you wanted to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty close.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing that.
Okay.
And 2005 finished the medic school, the combat medic school down in Texas. And that was the first.
What part of Texas?
San Antonio.
Okay.
So, and that was the first 6 years and change of my career was as a medic.
Wow. So was it going the way that you anticipated it would? Was it kind of what you expected, or was it much different?
Not at all. It was a whole different animal.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like there's no way to expect it, though, honestly, what you're going to get into.
Yeah, that's true.
And the school is amazing. I mean, you get skills just in that school that most people in a civilian healthcare field never even think about doing.
Yeah.
But this is 2005.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you got to think, all right, as soon as I'm done here, I'm going to war.
Yeah, I'm going to Iraq.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is great because that's what we signed up to do.
Right.
And I think out of my class alone, I think I want to say we had at least 5 that went straight from that school
Okay.
over to war. So it wasn't the case for me.
Yeah.
That was part of the struggle that I had throughout my
It's an interesting struggle, isn't it?
It is.
Like, because you would think most people, Stephanie and I are sitting here thinking, well, I wouldn't want to go there.
It's so, I'm in my head thinking, I was like, God, I wouldn't want to.
But it's interesting. And, the first time in my life I ever heard that kind of sentiment was from my grandfather, who, this was during the big war, right?
Sure.
World War II. And his brothers also, they went, there was a sense of, I need to serve my country.
Right,
I need to go fight. I want to go. And his brothers went, and they all signed up together, and they all went. And he wasn't medically cleared to go.
Oh, wow.
And he was so frustrated because he wanted to go. And to me, that seemed like such a foreign concept. And the more I speak to people, especially around that time frame, they felt what you felt. And they're like, I just want to go. I see other people going. I want to go. I want to do my job.
Right.
And, it's just a different mindset.
It is. As he said that, I literally thought in my head, I was like, I would feel such the opposite. I would say I want to stay here. And the pride and the courage that you have to want to do that is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So they go, you stay. What happens next?
So I was stationed at Walter Reed in D.C.
Okay.
The most prestigious hospital, in the world. And now is since then closed, and now it's all consolidated at Bethesda Naval Hospital. But the beast that was Walter Reed, I was 19, maybe I was still 19 when I first got there. I knew everything in the world, right? I was fresh out of school. I was the best at everything.
You weren't cocky at all.
Not at all. Not at all. And I got there, and there's just absolutely nothing you can do, regardless of how old you are, to mentally prepare for just the devastation of what we were receiving from Iraq and Afghanistan.
We had our national spokesperson. I don't know if you've heard his story or not, Brian Anderson, but he was in an explosion in Iraq and lost,
I think we talked about that
2 legs
before.
and an arm. Yeah. And he talks about being in a Humvee one moment in Iraq and waking up in Walter Reed.
Yeah.
And thinking he was still in Iraq.
Right.
And not realizing he was in the United States. So I think that's the case for many of them, wasn't it?
It was. And I can't tell you how many times when a patient would come to and come up swinging at me because they thought they were still, in a situation.
Right.
And
that moment of fear.
Yeah.
And uncertainty.
Yeah. And somebody's got their hands on them, and it was an interesting first duty assignment.
Yeah.
And I always tell people I went from 19 years old to 30 in a week. I think.
Yeah. It's got to be that feeling of I know everything too. I know nothing, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I mean, at that point, all I knew how to do was draw blood and start IVs in my head,
How does that change your perspective? So you were wanting to go, you're wanting to fight. Now you're seeing the results of war. Did it change your perspective on you wanting to be there?
It heightened my anger at not being there.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
And is that something that's hard to get past?
That's something that I continue to live with.
Really?
Yeah. And it took a while. I hit some really dark places with that. With that journey, that mental journey, and
because they wouldn't let you fulfill what you felt like you needed to fulfill.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, I had it in my head like, oh, well, if I was over there, I would make a difference.
Yeah.
And, that's just not reality. That's not the case.
Hmm.
And
But at that age,
yeah.
and that mindset, you're going to go save the world.
Right.
Yeah.
And, but in reality, we were making a difference in Walter Reed because
Oh, yeah.
I would say it maybe up to 90% of the patients that I received, I worked nights.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever the planes would fly in from Landstuhl overnight, I would be there to receive all of the patients that were coming in. And 9 times out of 10, they weren't even conscious. They were on ventilators and everything else, and had no idea that they were even
Right.
Were there any of those patients that you got to know pretty well?
There were a few, and I was fortunate enough to be one of the only medics that was on, I guess we'll call it a committee or a team, that they started a Wounded Warrior Project rehab facility.
Yep. Yep.
Amazing facility. And at the time, I think that may have opened in 2006.
Yeah.
It could have been 07. But anyway, I was part of that team, and the cool thing about it, and I had never seen this before at that time, there was a ceiling or a track on the ceiling, and it had a harness that dropped down.
Okay.
So amputees that were learning how to walk could just we could put them in the harness, and then we didn't have to hold on to them.
Oh, wow.
Because
So they could walk, almost feel like
right.
normal.
Independence
That's
was a
great.
huge thing.
Yeah.
I mean, no 20, 21-year-old,
Yeah.
somebody that just came back from war that's, just, I guess, macho for lack of a
Right.
better
Gung
term.
ho. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to
But was
be
physically
held
able. Yeah.
and, helped walk around. So that was a big, not only a physical rehab tool, but it also helps with the mental game too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it was a really cool thing to be a part of. And I had some patients, I think I was there for 2 years. I had some patients that were there longer than I was.
Nic, were there any patients that really stuck out to you during this time?
I did have one, we'll call him Bob today.
Okay.
He was a triple amputee, both legs at the knees and then one arm at the elbow. It was especially difficult with him because a lot of times over those couple of years, you get to know family members, you get to know.
So you spent a lot of time with
everybody.
this family and
Absolutely.
yeah.
And a lot of times as the medic there taking care of these patients, you are seeing them before their family does.
Oh,
so
yeah.
a lot of times
Wow.
you are the first person the family sees.
Right.
So
And you're
it's a
kind
lot
of the
to
one that
process.
they come to and say, how is he really doing?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Especially after you get to know them, then
Right.
they don't want to talk to, they hear the doctor
Sure.
and talk and, get the information, but
But you're there day to day with them,
right.
working it out.
But they're hearing what I'm saying, but then, and that doesn't go to say that I was giving,
No.
wasn't playing doctor or
No,
anything,
but that level of comfortability.
Yeah. So getting back to Bob, he was, it was a long, painful process.
Yeah.
In a recovery period. And, like I said, got to know his family, got to know everybody, was invited to things with them.
Yeah.
All kinds of stuff. And when it came time for me to PCS from Walter Reed, that was a hard time for everybody because he was still there.
Oh, wow.
Going through his rehab.
Yeah.
And
How do you let them know? Like, somebody like that you see every day? I mean, how do you let them know you're being reassigned?
Well, he understands how it works.
Yeah.
Just wearing a uniform as well. So, we just kind of, that's actually probably a conversation we had fairly early on.
Okay.
Something as casual as, so how long have you, what's your timeline here?
Yeah.
As simple as that.
Right.
a lot of times, because the good thing about veteran conversations is they can be pretty blunt.
Yeah.
Especially from one veteran to another. So, I'm sure we had that conversation of, hey, when are you leaving?
So you leave Walter Reed. What's next?
So I go at that time I went to the reserves.
Okay.
A medical unit in the reserves.
Right. In Kentucky?
In Kentucky.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
It was in Lexington, actually.
Okay.
And
Home of the UK Wildcats.
Go Cats.
that's right.
Unfortunately.
So I get home, and I don't know. It was, it was less than a year.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even less than 6 months. And before I left, I told Bob, I told his whole family, I said, hey, if you guys ever need anything, don't hesitate to call me. Please absolutely call me if you need anything. Yeah. And, here we are. I get a phone call. Huh. Didn't know it, so I didn't answer it because I never do if I don't know it.
Yeah.
So they left a voicemail, and, it was his mom said, hey, Nick, this is, so-and-so. I wanted to call and talk to you about Bob. Just give me a call back whenever you can. And I, immediately thought, worst case scenario.
Right. That's exactly what I was thinking.
So I was prepared to just get on a plane and fly up there instead of calling back.
Yeah.
Just to see what's going on for myself. So I called back after I kind of calmed myself down a little bit. And, she said, hey, he wanted to see if you'd come up, for a visit over the weekend. And, is everything okay? Is everything okay? What's going on? And she didn't really give me much to go with.
Yeah.
She said, he's fine, but he needs you to come up here. I was like, all right, well,
on my way.
Yeah. So I ended up going back to DC.
Okay.
To visit, and turns out he wanted me up there because he was doing his first lap around the hospital on his prosthetic legs.
That's so cool.
So
that's awesome.
I got to walk the veranda with him.
Wow.
For his first, go around with his new legs.
That's so cool. What a great moment.
I know. I didn't expect the story to go like this. It's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty intense.
That's really wild.
Yeah.
So his family was all there. You're there. Mm-hmm. So cool.
Yeah, it was pretty intense.
So I assume you probably still
get
to talk to him and connect with him.
Unfortunately, it's been several years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a long time. Life happens. And, I since have gotten rid of a lot of email accounts and social media and all that stuff. So
well, hopefully someday you can track him down.
Yeah, hopefully so.
That's good. Maybe he's listening.
Right.
Yeah, he might be.
Those are those memories that don't go away.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. So then you're back to Kentucky. What's next? You're in the Guard?
I'm in the reserves at that time.
Yeah.
And I was home for, I don't know, year and a half tops.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was closer to a year. And I was going crazy. I was like, I have to go back somewhere.
Yeah.
I was working at an immediate care center at the time.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I was still doing some medical stuff, but it wasn't, I went from a 10 to a 2. Basically,
right.
And I was having a hard time figuring out where I could utilize all of the energy that I had I had, because I was used to just
go
nonstop.
Yeah.
The most intense feelings and situations every day that I worked.
Right.
And now I'm
to someone has a cold,
just kind of hanging.
Right. Yeah. And you're finally getting to do that IV there.
Yeah. Now
it's I can do that blood draw now.
Yeah. Now I'm swabbing somebody's throat for strep.
Right.
And it was a really hard transition.
Oh, I could imagine.
You just want to slap them in the head.
You're like, you're fine. Go home. Okay. You're fine.
So
I would be that one too.
Yeah.
I'd be like, you don't understand the pain.
When I cough, it hurts. Like, I don't care.
I think what put me over the edge was somebody came in with like a sprained ankle, and they told me they were at a 9 out of 10. And I just
oh my god!
I had to sit the clipboard down.
And I'm a head out.
I said, "Hey, I'm going home," and I left.
Did you really?
Yeah.
He said, "I can't do this."
Yeah.
It's probably someone like me or you.
I didn't.
Wow.
I didn't want to do the disrespectful thing of just losing my mind on somebody.
This is a common thing that I hear though. When people come back from some pretty traumatic situations and how frustrated they get with civilians about their kind of being dramatic
Right.
about things.
Yeah.
We had somebody on a couple weeks back, and he talked about being in combat, being in pretty heavy combat in Afghanistan, and coming back and going back to college, and sitting in a class, and he said, the professor said, "Tell me about a time that you were you faced adversity." And this kid raises his hand and said, I had a meeting, an important meeting at work, and I only had pink paper clips. And I had to decide whether or not to use the pink paper clips or to go without paper clips. And this guy is just like boiling.
Yeah.
And he's like, I had to decide whether or not I was going to save all my guys by taking out the enemy, and it's just, it puts things into perspective.
It does.
It really does. So you had the chance within the Guard, in talking to you, to do some special operations stuff too, some kind of unique projects, right?
Yes. And it was 2009 was my last duty station before I made that transition.
Yeah.
I was down at Fort Hood, and if you all recall the shooting that happened down there, I was in the room there, and I was one of the NCOICs at the SRP site. So that was
you were when you say you were in the room, what do you mean?
So the building was it was an extremely small building, and there were no rooms. It was just the office cubicle dividers.
Yeah.
Wow.
So and I actually interacted with him several times that day before.
He was the psychologist, right?
Yeah, psychiatrist or psychologist.
Yeah, kind of a wild situation. Really,
that was an extremely difficult situation to process, because you don't ever, nothing in our training doctrine or anything really prepares you to analyze or analyze within yourself. Seeing somebody with the same uniform on, do something like that. That's a whole.
So you were there when this was happening?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
hearing the gunshots and the whole thing,
physically in the.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea.
So that was kind of the last straw for me, if you will.
Well, yeah. How do you process
a big
that?
turning
How do you
point,
come out of that in the right frame of mind?
Time, really, it was the biggest thing.
Well, yeah, that's
because I was still at the time. I was still dealing with, because we are. Let's see, that was 2009, so less than 2 years after leaving Walter Reed in that situation. So I was still processing things from the previous experiences.
But you hadn't had to see it happen. You're seeing the results of it, but you weren't having to see it happen.
but not in the way that you mentally have prepared yourself to see it happen.
Yeah, that's true.
So, nobody could shoot back, because you don't walk around with weapons on a.
It's got to be a terrible feeling.
And here's this, who at the time was supposed to be a
respected
professional.
Well, and in a position of trust,
right?
Yeah, and power and everything else. So. It was an insane situation.
Wow.
So
I'm sorry, I didn't know that you were.
Yeah, and that was the last bit of my conventional military career.
Wow,
was down there.
I'm sure,
and
and it's probably the case for many other people that were in the room with you.
It could be, but I think a lot of people were just done completely after that. So I'm not sure how many are still in or stayed in or continued to serve. But
is it something that was hard for you to talk about for a while, or is it something that you tried to be pretty open about?
No, it took a long time. That I remember my family coming down for Thanksgiving that year to Texas. Just because it was, it happened in November. So it was still, things were still happening. The situation was kind of still fluid with investigation, whatever was going on. So they all flew down, and I remember that being just the most numb Thanksgiving I've ever.
Well, yeah, I'm sure.
I've ever experienced. I didn't really care that it was Thanksgiving. Didn't really care that we were all together. I just kind of was just there.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have that sense of how did I survive that?
Yeah, and that was the hardest part for years.
Yeah.
Was the survivor guilt is what they call it.
Yeah.
And that, it just, like I said, it compounded the survivor guilt that I had while I was at Walter Reed as well.
Did you get a chance to interact with other people who were in that same situation in that room? Like, do you guys talk about it years later, or do you not really communicate with them?
We did for a while, but I haven't talked to anybody,
because nobody's going to be able to relate to that experience unless you were in the room.
Yeah.
And it was there was also kind of an ugly part to it where, when people started talking about, or when word got out that, hey, they're going to give out awards if you were there or whatever, you wouldn't believe the number of people that were submitting sworn statements saying that they were in the building, like hundreds. But
What?
that many people couldn't have fit in that building.
Wow.
So, there was an ugly part to it, but
Sure.
It got very political very fast.
it did.
Yeah.
It did. And then, but I think they did as well as they could have to put together a pretty good, memorial ceremony there.
And the shooter, I believe he died at the.
No, he was paralyzed. He was shot, but and then he was paralyzed.
Okay, so he's still alive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
I don't think they'll ever fully make that conviction.
Really,
the process.
Okay,
yeah.
Wow.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. So do you follow it, or do you just kind of dismiss
I haven't
it?
in a while.
Yeah.
There's weird waves of being comfortable with talking about it or looking into it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's just some periods of time where I'm just like, I don't know. I'm not even touching that.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Because I would be inclined to go.
Well, and I would think the last thing you want to do is be overcome with anger.
Yeah.
And frustration. Yeah. And you don't want to live your life that way.
Right,
you don't want your family to see you live your life that way.
Yeah. Over the several years, a lot of hours of talking to people and other processes that the best thing that I've found for me to, as far as coping, the initial thing was music.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It just kind of allowed me to go into thoughts a little bit more than I was allowing myself to.
It's interesting. I was reading an article about another veteran who came back from some traumatic situations, and they found kind of their peace in hiking in nature, and everybody's got their little thing, don't they?
They do, and I think that's important for people to understand is there's no right answer. There's no blanket answer for everybody.
It's not a one size fits all.
Exactly. You got to figure out what works for you, and sure, there's going to be professionals along the way to guide you or, give you some pointers. But, ultimately, it's up to you to figure out what works.
It's a wild range of emotions that come through a military career. And, every conversation we have, Steph, I keep coming up with, I keep hearing these same things.
I would say they're all so different, but all still very similar when it comes down to the emotions that you all are feeling, if you had to categorize them at least.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So there's a pride, but there's a frustration and there's a guilt and there's all these things wrapped up into one that people a lot of times just don't know what to do with.
Yeah. Well, we're not really wired from the beginning to know how to deal with those.
Right. And you're human at the end of the day. And that's the hardest part because you're doing unhuman-like things at times.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that makes us, one of the most awesome machines in the world is our our brains have the ability to figure things out as long as you can try to utilize or tap into it in healthy ways.
Well, what's wild about what you're doing right now is that you're talking it through. And that's what we try to encourage everybody to do.
Absolutely.
When you've come through a traumatic experience, something that you know, this is going to mess me up, right? This is something that's going to make me different. Talk it out. And it gets that pressure out. It gets that frustration out. And so many of the people, you know, the suicide rate is high. It is. So many of the people that are in that dark place, are going through it, are just keeping it to themselves for whatever reason, maybe out of pride. Sometimes as men, we're proud and we don't want to ask for help. Sometimes women, you know, they deal with it a different way. But just trying to find that buddy, that person that you can, maybe there's that one person that you know they would understand if nobody else. And finding that person and talking it through with them is so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, I didn't know that story, so I appreciate you sharing it. And I'm sure it's not an easy thing to talk about. So you decided you were done at that point. Then where do you go?
Well, so I came back. Actually, I started the process before I even came back to my reserve unit in Lexington. You know, I contacted my command and said, "Hey, I want to do something bigger. I want to do something else."
Right.
And as a command team, it's their responsibility to make sure that you are getting everything you can or want out of your career.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure. I was still fairly young, so I wasn't sure how successful or easy it was going to be for me to contact my leadership and say, "Hey, I want to leave and go somewhere better."
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
How's this going to go over? Right.
But you know, at the time, I thought this is a tricky situation. But now, being in the position I'm in now, it's not tricky at all. All it takes is a conversation. Because as a leader, I'm not going to sit here and deny if you want to do something better with your career. I'm not going to tell you no, you can't.
Right.
Right.
So it's a simple conversation, but can be painstakingly slow on the paperwork side.
Yeah.
Where did it lead to?
It led to finding out that the National Guard has a special operations company. There are 2 special operations units in the Guard.
And I'm sure this time you're thinking, finally, I've been trying to get to this for so long.
Because I wasn't sure, because I knew I had time remaining on my reserve contract.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, you know, again, I was young. I didn't know any processes or regulations or anything like that as far as how that worked.
Yeah.
But it was almost like a 1-to-1 swap where I left the reserves and just walked straight over to the Guard, which is an entirely different world.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that because the reserves is all federally funded and the National Guard is state. So, you know,
so instead of working for the president, you're working for the governor.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, with the exception of deployments and things like that. But so it was a little bit. It was a different world, but notionally the same. Especially for conventional units, they're still, you know, a week in a month, 2 weeks in the summer, kind of thing. But,
were there any projects, without giving any details, but were there any projects that stuck out to you that you got to do? Because it is kind of a unique thing from an operations side.
It is a unique thing. There was
any wild situations you found yourself in?
Yes.
More than you know.
I think one of the craziest. Well, there were 2, but I think one of the craziest was when I had to put a hyena down in the jungle in Africa. That was an intense
because it was attacking.
We didn't want to give it the
right. I was like,
I gotcha.
We don't want to let it get that far.
It's giving you the stink eye.
It's kind of like what they do.
Yeah.
By instinct.
Yeah.
It stalked us for several hours.
Oh no.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's unsettling.
And he wasn't trying to play fetch.
Maybe, but
did anyone try?
Steph.
So yeah, come to find out, and that was I felt bad for initially, because I know those are protected animals over there.
Yeah.
In certain areas.
Right.
But you also got to do.
But I also don't. I would also like to come home.
Yeah.
Or that not be the way I don't come home.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was honestly a scary situation.
Yeah.
Because it was the middle of the night, and the last thing you expect to
especially
see.
at night.
Yeah, the last thing you expect to see when you put your gun on in a direction with the light on is
Eyes
these
staring.
giant eyes looking at you, growling or making whatever noise he was making.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a pretty wild situation.
One of those moments you're like, how did I get here?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you nice or no?
That's wild.
The answer is no.
Well, good. So looking back on your career, it's been good?
It has been.
I know it's been a roller coaster.
It has been a roller coaster. But I know for a fact that the experiences that I have gotten, there's no way I would have gotten them anywhere else.
Yeah.
But, it's impossible.
And it's wild to think, when you're thinking about going back to the beginning of the story and you're talking about the frustration of not being able to be deployed where you wanted to and when you wanted to, but how it ended up. They put you in a position that was best suited for you in many cases, right?
Looking back on it now,
even though you didn't see it at the time.
Right. Looking back on it now, I gained so much experience.
Yeah.
Being in the places that I was, that it was fulfilling in its own way.
Yeah.
Now
awesome.
looking back on it.
So we talked about the different emotions that come through a life of service, a career of service. What would you tell somebody in the service now prior to their finishing their career? Maybe dealing with some of these issues. What advice would you give them? Maybe a younger soldier.
Don't wait. As soon as you can feel that something's different, or maybe you've experienced something that you can tell kind of, made you feel a little bit weird about things that generally you just don't really ever even think about. Kind of investigate that within yourself.
Yeah.
I think
is that maybe when you start withdrawing from other people and start clamming up a little bit?
Unintentionally even sometimes.
Yeah.
But I think maintaining a relationship with yourself and really knowing like what all is going on.
Yeah.
Is important, because if you don't do that, then things get away from you, can get away from you.
And then it starts going down a dark road.
Right. And sometimes that can be impossible to get out of.
Right.
At the very least, very difficult to get out of. I was fortunate enough to have an amazing support system with my family and friends. And, I hit some very, very low, very dark places. But having the awareness that I was there, instead of just kind of,
and that's important,
being there.
We talk about the dark places. We talk about being in these dark places, but recognizing the dark places is important. Recognizing that this is the state I'm in, whether I like it or not, and this is why. And I know I need to talk through it. I need to get with somebody, and not just keeping it all to yourself.
And so for me, for years, it was my cousin and one of our best friends that just random, if they got a call or a text at 2, 3 a.m. with me saying some weird stuff, they not initially, but eventually, kind of pieced it together that, okay, he's reaching out again.
Yeah.
So, and they wouldn't even try to play like a hero card or kind of dig in.
Right.
They would just respond to whatever I said with, whatever the crazy subject was or whatever I said that didn't make sense. They would just respond to that.
Right.
Yeah. So what about somebody who doesn't have that support system? What do they do?
So I think they need to find a purpose. You know, without that, especially if they're making a transition out, you know, you're going from having a purpose every day. You put a uniform on and show up
And
to
a
work.
team.
And a team.
Yeah.
To coming home
to nothing.
Not knowing what I'm doing in
Right.
the morning, the afternoon.
And,
your day being open.
Feeling lost, feeling, you know, hopeless, whatever the term may be. But I think that's where knowing yourself comes into play, is because without purpose, that's where a lot of these issues come up.
Yeah.
Is people come home, sit down, have nothing to do, and start going crazy a little bit.
You know, I thought, and this isn't a chance for self-promotion at all. I'm not trying to say that, but one of the things I noticed within USA Cares when we started these chapters programs around the country is we had veterans who volunteer to be part of that chapter because they would say, I need this.
Right.
And I didn't understand what that meant. Ignorantly, I didn't understand what that meant at first. Now I'm starting to understand why they're saying it's exactly what you're saying. They need that outlet.
And finding a specific purpose, I think, is a huge thing, because you come back and no knock on any job at all, but let's say you go work for the post office. It's not the same purpose. It's not the same fulfillment that you were looking for that you had before. You've got to find that fulfillment that feeds your soul.
Yep. Well, that's good, man. Well, you're helping people today.
I hope so.
I really think you are.
Yep.
You know, find me on LinkedIn. That's the only social media I have.
Absolutely.
So if anybody wants to reach out, by all means, you know, I'm always available for a response or whatever. So
I'm going to keep pulling you into this USA Cares world.
That's fine.
I'm going to keep pulling you in.
Good.
Got to get you involved. Our buddy Robert, who's in the sound booth right now, is a part of our Kentucky chapter, and we'll try to pull you into that too.
Absolutely.
So, but thank you for being on.
Yeah,
sharing
thank you so
story.
much.
Thank you all for having me.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, you know, we want this podcast to be that sense of hope. We want to portray that message to all of our listeners that reach out for help. You know, USA Cares is one of thousands of veteran nonprofits. There are so many good ones out there. If it's not us, find another one that fits you. Find that help you need, but don't sit in silence. Don't keep it all to yourself. Talk this stuff out, because it's really it's frustrating to lose veterans every day, and we don't want it anymore. And so reach out, get the help you need. There's no shame in it. There's no, put the pride aside and just ask for help. So coming up, we've got in the next couple of weeks, we've got a lot more stories of people, their life experiences coming through hardships, and there's a lot of hope in a lot of these stories.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to share those with you. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make this part of your regular routine. I want to, as we wrap up, I want to make sure I mention the Speakeasy Podcast Network. Speakeasy Podcast Network makes this happen every single week. And if you're a regular listener, we couldn't do this without them. We use their studio. They help us really put these podcasts together and make them as professional as they are. If you or your company, your organization is interested in doing a podcast, I would highly recommend you check them out. SpeakeasyNetwork.com is the place to go. These guys know what they're doing. They are the experts in the field. You need to reach out and check them out today. Thank you all so much for being part of it, joining our podcast this week. Make sure you listen in again next week, and we look forward to being with you then. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.